Hi guys, my name is Blake. Welcome. As you can probably guess from the title, I'm bringing you my Medievalathon Wrap Up. Medievalathon is a readathon hosted by Holly Hart's Books. This round of the readathon lasted from January 10th to February 10th, and we read books to match prompts for our medieval profession. I managed to read 15 books, I completed 3 professions, and I made it to Empress. I have a lot of books to talk about, so I'll just jump right in. The first profession that I completed was for the baker. The first prompt was read a book chosen for you, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I read this book for a Discord book club hosted by Jazz from Red Panda Reads. I'll leave her channel link down below. She's really great. Do check it out. I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is not something that I would normally pick up, and I'm glad that it was picked. Our main character, Nora, has committed suicide, and she wakes up in the Midnight Library. This is a place between life and death where all of your past decisions are and where all of your future possibilities lie. And she can choose her own life from these endless possibilities. I really liked the idea of this story and the messages in it. It is kind of like a Groundhog Day plot line where she is living different lives over and over again. And that's never my favorite, and it did get a little repetitive there in the middle. I do wish that I had connected with Nora's character more because this book does talk about such dark things. I don't know why Nora made certain decisions that she made either. Also, every time she went to a new life, she would check her social media to see how happy she was in that life, and that really bugged me. But overall, I did enjoy the end, and I did like how everything turned out. The next prompt was read a debut novel, and I read The Crown Conspiracy by Michael J. Sullivan. And this novel follows this thief and mercenary group for hire, and on one of their missions, they get accused of murder, and they kind of have to go on the run and clear their names. This book is incredibly quick and fun. It's definitely not the most original plot line. However, I really like heist. The thief mercenary for hire is always a lot of fun, and I absolutely love the friendship between Royce and Hadrian. Just their banter and the shenanigans that they get up to. I read it in one sitting. I gave it 4 stars. Next up was a book with Brown on the cover, Truthwitch by Susan Dennard. I buddy read this with my Bookstagram bestie Carissa. And she and I both really enjoyed it. But we're following these 2 young witches, and after they have been caught up in some political drama, they have to flee. So this book has a lot of elements that I personally really enjoy. The writing style does remind me of Sarah J. Maas a lot. I really loved the magic system. In this world, there are different groups of witches, and they all have their own unique beliefs and specialties, and their own limitations. For example, a fire witch healer has different limitations than a water witch healer. Or just because you have a group of wind witches, that doesn't mean that they can all do the same thing. So I really like that aspect. There's also a lot of conflict between these different groups of witches and amongst these different kingdoms in this world. I think that the future books will be more politically heavy. There are also some really great friendships in this one. My only complaint is that there are parts of the story that felt rushed or skipped over. There is one scene when they're trying to escape from somewhere, and the escape happens incredibly quickly. They escape in a paragraph, and I was thinking that it would be a lot harder to escape than that. A book from a genre you don't read from. And for that one, I read All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. So in this story, we're following a German boy and a French girl during World War II. And the synopsis tells us that their lives collide in an unlikely way. I'm just going to go ahead and apologize because I know that so many people love this book, but I hated it. I gave it 2 stars. I think that the author is an incredibly talented writer. The writing was gorgeous. I don't mind a slow book, but this one felt so unnecessarily slow. It just meandered so much. It just keeps that same constant slow pace from beginning to end. Even when something exciting is happening, it's still got that really slow pace. I didn't care about the characters either. And I wanted to, but I didn't connect with any of them. My biggest complaint about this book, though, is that there was this added element of this magical stone, and I just didn't get it. I didn't know why it needed to be there. You could have completely cut that out of the story, and it would have been exactly the same. Overall, I feel like the whole thing could have just been a lot shorter. An author you admire. I really struggled to find a book for this prompt, so I decided to go with a reread, and I went with Stormfront by Jim Butcher. This is the first book in the Dresden Files. This is my third time reading this book. I gave it 5 stars, as you could probably guess. The first 2 times I read this, it was in 2019, and as soon as I finished it, I flipped it to the front and read it all over again. I read it twice in one sitting, and this third time that I read it in one sitting again. I think that this story is just incredibly addictive. We're following this wizard detective in Chicago. He's definitely a very flawed character, but I can't help but to root for him all the time. My only complaint about this book is that I really don't like the way that the female characters are described. They're all insanely gorgeous, and Harry's always telling us about how they look. But it is written as a noir detective novel, and I get that that's part of the genre, and I can't wait to continue with the series. But I have heard that the second and third books aren't as great, so basically I just keep rereading this first one. The Bard was the next profession that I completed. The first prompt was read a book with a great first line, and for that one I read The Gilded Cage by Vic James. She heard the motorbike first, then the galloping horse, 2 distant points of noise in the darkness, converging on her as she ran. I gave this book 2.5 stars. In this alternate world, magic users have taken over and become the political powers of the world, and all non-magic users must be slaves to these gifted individuals for 10 years. We are following this family as they decide to go into slavery together as a group, and they are supposed to become slaves to this very wealthy and powerful family. I really didn't enjoy this. This is very much a dystopian book disguised as a fantasy, I feel like. And I personally really don't like dystopian, so take what I say with a grain of salt. So I really loved the prologue of this book. I was very intrigued by this family and the magic, and I wanted to know more about what was going on. And I enjoyed the beginning as well, when we meet this family and we are discovering more about this world. But where it lost me was in the middle. It was very slow, not a lot happened, and there were certain POVs and plot lines that I really didn't care about at all. Given the synopsis of this book and the prologue, I was expecting a lot more political intrigue. I thought that the family would go to this house of these wealthy magicians and discover all these horrible secrets about them and that kind of thing. But there wasn't really very much politicking involved at all. We had some here and there, but it was very minor. And then there wasn't a lot of magic either. I did think that the ending was really good, but it wasn't interesting enough for me to continue on with the series. The next one is a book with a travel element, and I picked up The Lady Rogue by Jenn Bennett. I gave it 4.5 stars. This is a YA historical fantasy. We are following our main character Theo, and she has followed her historian father all over the world. And this time he is looking for the cursed ring of Dracula, or Vlad the Impaler. He goes missing, and Theo has to team up with her ex-boyfriend to save her father. I absolutely loved the descriptions and the settings in this book as we travel through these towns and villages. It reminded me a lot of Carrie Moniscalco's Stalking Jack the Ripper series, especially Hunting Prince Dracula. And not just because both books involve Dracula, but the way that the author describes the setting and that spooky atmosphere surrounding the area. This story has some magical elements woven throughout, and that's part of the mystery aspect, and I really enjoyed it. Theo is a huge fan of the occult and all things strange and unusual, and I just really loved her character. She was incredibly sassy and smart. There is also a slight romance, but it takes a backseat to the action. I feel like it was done really well. I deducted a half star because at the climax of the story, I feel like things wrapped up a little too quickly, and I wanted them to be stretched out a bit. A book title that's a character's name, and for that one I have The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. Evelyn Hardcastle will be murdered every night at 11 p.m. Our main character has 8 days and 8 witnesses to inhabit. If he can't guess her killer correctly, he has to start the loop all over again. This book literally consumed my brain. I couldn't stop thinking about it while I was reading. I think that the author was insanely clever, and I think that this was an incredibly unique idea. For most of the book, I thought that I was going to give it 5 stars, but I ended up giving it 3.5, mostly because I hated the ending. There is no way that I ever would have been able to guess the killer. Not that that's a problem, but I feel like everything came totally out of left field. It felt totally random. I never would have seen it coming. Then there was this element that was introduced at about the halfway point of the story, and I thought that it would be explained later, but it wasn't, and I didn't enjoy that part of it either. Sorry, I'm being really cryptic, but it's a mystery, so I don't want to spoil anything. There were a lot of things about this one that I liked. I love how interactive this book felt. We are finding clues as the main character is finding them. Each day he wakes up and he inhabits a new body. He takes on their thoughts and personality. And these people that he inhabits are not good people. There are a lot of trigger warnings in this, so do be cautious. But what I loved about this is that not a single person in this book is likable. They're all very bad people, and they all have a lot of secrets, and it was a lot of fun unraveling those secrets. A book over 400 pages, and for that one I have The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This book is taking place in an alternate London, and it is illegal to be clairvoyant, and that is exactly what our main character is. And she works for a crime lord. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This is another dystopian. This book isn't anything new. We've seen these tropes thousands of times. There were definitely moments that reminded me of Divergent and The Hunger Games, and there were aspects that reminded me of Shadow and Bone. And a lot of those tropes I don't like. The author puts a twist on the big bad of the series. Most dystopian books are about a corrupt government. But this one was very different. It's not a corrupt government, but rather it is a corrupt entity. This world is also incredibly dense. There are info dumps, but I don't mind those because I do like a lot of world building. I also did like the magic system and how it was used. I wish that I had seen more of it. Overall, this book felt like a lot of setup for the future books. A book with multiple authors, and for that one I read Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. I have never read a Terry Pratchett book before, and I'm kind of bummed that I started with this one. I don't have very many books on my shelves with multiple authors, so that was the one that I went with, and I listened to the audiobook. I have kind of mixed feelings about the book as a whole. I gave it 3 stars. This is a satirical comedy about an angel and a demon that have lost the Antichrist as they are trying to maneuver around their superiors and prevent the end of the world. It sounded like my cup of tea, and I really enjoyed whenever Aziraphale the angel and Crawley the demon were on the page. I enjoyed reading from their perspectives. I did find it funny at times, and I did like the way that the characters interacted with each other. And I am looking forward to watching the TV show. But then we had chapters that were told from the perspectives of other characters, and I didn't care about the other characters. I just wanted to be with Aziraphale and Crawley. But I think it was a really unique story, and I am glad that I read it, and I will definitely be looking into checking out other works, and I will be checking out other works by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Next profession that I attained was blacksmith, and the first prompt was read a book with gold, silver, or bronze in the title or cover. This is silver lettered, and it's called the Silver Trilogy. This one was originally written in German, and it was translated into English. And we're following this girl who is at this new school, and she starts hanging out with this group of teenagers who have accidentally summoned a demon. This book was kind of all over the place. There were mysteries and deaths, disappearances, prophecies, dream walking. There were a lot of moments in this book where I was kind of left scratching my head, asking myself, why is it like this? What is that? What does that mean? Why? Despite those things, I really loved that this book really leaned into and embraced how weird it was. This is an older YA book, and you can definitely tell it has a lot of tropes from the 2000s that I know people don't always like. There are absentee parents that don't care about anything. We have this girl who's starting a new school, and there's this group of guys that are oh so hot and mysterious. Keep those things in mind. If you don't like the old tropes, I don't think that you will like this one. It's written like a contemporary, like the writing style just feels a lot like the books that I read in my early teens. I gave it the 3 stars. I think it's okay. There are definitely elements that I enjoyed and elements that I didn't enjoy. And I'm not sure if I will continue with the series or not. A book you're scared to read. For this one, I picked Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Darrow is a red, and he is the lowest caste on Mars. His people are slaves, and they work every day to make sure that Mars is inhabitable for future generations. However, Darrow discovers that he has been lied to by the Golds, who are these upper class beings. They're basically like gods in this world. Darrow plans to become a Gold, infiltrate their society, and destroy it. I knew that this one was dystopian going in. However, I was also expecting it to be sci-fi heavy as well. I really enjoyed the first part of this book when Darrow is on Mars and he is mining in the pits in the depths of Mars. And I really just enjoyed reading his everyday life. That first part felt very sci-fi. It felt really well done, and I really loved it. I think if the book had continued being like that, I would have given it 5 stars. But however, I ended up giving it 3 stars because after that first part, things kind of started to go really downhill. And when he does finally become a Gold, he has to go to the Institute, and here they make all of the Golds compete in a competition. I didn't care for any of that at all. It's like it stopped being science fiction and it became completely dystopian. It didn't feel like it had anything original going for it after that first part. It just felt too similar to other dystopians that I have seen. I didn't particularly care about Darrow, the main character, either. I normally like unlikable characters, but there was something about Darrow that I just couldn't get with. I thought that the side characters were a lot more interesting, particularly Severo. The next one was Read a Book with a Weapon on the Cover, and I read For the Killing of Kings by Andrew Howard Jones, an adult fantasy novel following an archer and a squire that discover that there is a conspiracy to bring down their kingdom. And with no one to trust, they have to find a way to clear their names and figure out what's really going on. This one very much has a Three Musketeers feel to it. There's a lot of friendship and banter and sword fights, magic, politics, betrayals. Something that I really loved was the sense of friendship amongst the characters. I really enjoyed all of the characters, even the unlikable ones. There is also an animal companion aspect in the latter half of the book that I really enjoyed. The sword fight scenes were incredibly well done. The magic system wasn't fully explained in this one, but I hope that it will be explained more in further books. But in this book, certain individuals can wear rings of power to help them kind of hone their abilities. I gave this one 4.5 stars. My only complaint was that one of the main characters we follow, she tells us that she is not good at using magic, that she hasn't practiced very much, but then she ends up wearing this ring and she becomes amazing at it. And I don't know if that's the ring or if that was her. Read a hardcover, and for that one I read The Queen of Blood by Beth Durst. So I haven't seen very many people talk about this one, but my Bookstagram friend sent this to me as a gift, and she recommended it, and I have seen Elliot Brooks recommend it, and I'm so glad that I finally read it because I give it 5 stars. In this world there are these elemental spirits, and the queen keeps them in check because they want to eat people. But for some reason, the spirits are not obeying the queen, and no one knows why. But this book just has so many things that I love. This is one of those books that I feel like was written for me. There is a magical forest. I loved the spirits, the magic, and the idea of civilizations being up in the trees. I read it in a day. I didn't want to put it down. This book takes place over many years, and we're kind of watching as things get progressively worse. It took some really interesting turns that I wasn't expecting. The characters in this story are incredibly human. They are very flawed, and they're really just characters that I want to root for, and I love that about them. I think that Beth Durst is an amazing writer, and I'm really looking forward to reading her other works. And now I have the last book, read a series finale, and for that one I have it there, Shattered Light by Amie Kaufman and Meagan Spooner. This is the 3rd book in the Starbound trilogy. Because it is a finale, I can't really go too much into what this book is about. But in this book, we're following 6 very different individuals as they attempt to overthrow this very powerful politician, if you will, who has hurt them all in some way. The books all weave together really nicely. They're written in a really interesting format, and there is a mystery aspect to them. Each book is following 2 main characters, a boy and a girl, and there is a romance between these characters. And in this one, our main characters are Gideon, who is a hacker, and Sophia, who is a con artist. In this one, all 6 of these characters come together and meet face to face, and that was really satisfying to see, and I really enjoyed the ending. I will say that of the 3 books in the trilogy, this one was my least favorite. The romance in this story has a miscommunication aspect to it. Both of these characters are lying to each other to protect their secrets and their identities, but like, it's really not a big deal if they would just tell each other the truth. It's not as dramatic as it's set up to be. I know that some people like that trope. I personally hate the miscommunication thing, but I did still end up giving it 4 stars because I did like these characters, and I did like how everything wrapped up in the end. But overall, I would still highly recommend this trilogy if you are into YA sci-fi, because I don't feel like it gets enough love, and I never hear anyone talk about it. That is my wrap-up for Medievalathon. Let me know if you participated, what you read, or if you've read any of these, and I'll see you with another video again soon.